Well, hi there. Welcome to ChessBase Workshop. My name is Steve Lopez. Thank you for clicking that link and joining us here today. We're continuing our series on ChessBase Light, which is a free, kind of a demo version of ChessBase that you can download from www.chessbase.com. Last week in ChessBase Workshop, we took a look at the engine analysis pane in ChessBase Light. Now let me tell you, there are some things in this world that are better described with pictures than with words. For example, you could purchase and read an unillustrated copy of the Kama Sutra, and it might be a great read, but it's way better with the pictures. Conversely, though, there are some things that are better with the written word than with the spoken word and with pictures, and I believe the subject of last week's workshop was one of those. I went through an awful lot of material in about 17 minutes, and I realized that it may have shot right over the heads of a few of our viewers. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is this. If you saw last week's workshop about chess engines and you're still not clear on the material, do this. Use an internet search engine that allows you to limit the search to a particular domain. Limit the search to www.chessbase.com. And then use as your search terms engine analysis and ply, P-L-Y. Use those terms and do a search, and it should pull up some of my older articles where I explain the stuff in some detail. And the reason why the written word will probably work a little bit better is because you can go back over it at your own leisure. You can take a look at a paragraph, and if you're not quite sure, reread it, and it'll probably sink in, and you move on from there, and really take your time with it, because there was a lot of technical detail there, and I realized that trying to cram it all into a short video was going to be a pretty tough thing to do. We're going to look at a little bit more with the chess engine pane in this week's workshop. What I'm looking at here is a Roy Lopez game, same game as last week. I'm trying to figure out how to beat Carl Schlechter. I'm a player of the white side of the Roy. I don't play the black side of it because I don't play e5 in response to e4, but I do play the white side of the Roy. And Schlechter was a dang good player. And in this game so far, he seems to be doing pretty well. We have a very quiescent, very quiet position here. And I'm just wondering what the best way to go is. White plays h3 here. And I'm not entirely 100% sure that that is necessarily the most effective move. Not sure why he would play h3 unless he's worried about the bishop coming here to g4. So what I'd like to do is get some advice, and the way I do this is by going to the engine pane, selecting the command add Kibitzer Fritz 5.32. Fritz 5.32, that chess engine, is a freebie that's included with ChessBase Light. So we fire that up, and what we're seeing here is that Fritz thinks that other moves are better. One of the things we didn't explain last week when we looked at the engine analysis pane is what these two buttons here do. One is a plus, one is a minus. What it does, clicking the plus button, adds information to the engine analysis pane. I'm going to click it 3 extra times. What we're looking at is Fritz 5.32 is showing us the 4 best lines of play in this position, the 4 best moves for white in the current board position. And it gives you evaluations of each one of them. Now what we're looking at here is we're seeing that it thinks at the present moment that rook e1 is the best way to go for white. Bishop b3 is the second best move. Bishop b2 is third best. And rook d1 is the fourth best. And it gives you evaluations as we discussed last week. And what we're looking at right here is between the top move and the second move, they're essentially equivalent. Both of them, there's really no difference. You could play rook e1 or bishop b3, and you still have a dead even position. In Fritz's estimation, this is a dead level board. Nobody has an advantage here. That's what that 0.00 means. The third best line of play would give black about a quarter pawn advantage, 0.25 pawns, about a quarter of a pawn. That would be h3, which is what white actually plays here, by the way. But even a quarter pawn advantage is still considered to be an even position. But this move, minus 0.28, meaning black has a 28 hundredths of a pawn advantage, means that black has a slight edge, and that would occur with best play after white plays rook d1. But even 0.28, it's about a third of a pawn. Roughly, it's the equivalent of losing a tempo. It's not fatal. So what we're looking at in this position is it would be very hard for white to screw this up. You'd have to do something pretty dang dumb to mess up this position. So at this point, even h3 isn't that bad, although there are better moves. Rook e1 and bishop b3 are the way that Fritz is thinking that you should play here. But I want to show you something else. It's a pretty cool little feature. And I may have to actually stop the engine and restart it to make it work. But to activate it, you need to have one line of play showing. You can't get there with multiple lines of play showing in the window. So we click the minus button. Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up, by the way. There are 32 possible moves in this position, according to what we're seeing right here. And if you keep clicking the plus sign, you can keep clicking it until all 32 moves are displayed, ranked in order of preference, according to Fritz, with evaluations of all of them. By the way, this evaluation is going to change to 0.00 any second now. But you don't want to do that. You don't want to display every single possible move, and I'll tell you why. Every time you add a line of play to this that has to be constantly updated as Fritz thinks and looks deeper and deeper in a position, it has to be updated on your screen, and that takes a little bit of your computer resources away from Fritz. And what that means is the analysis slows down a little bit. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to move to a crawl if you try to show all 32 lines of play, but I do believe it's going to create a difference. It's going to be noticeable. It's not going to be a crawl, but it's not going to be as fast a search as if you only had 1, 2, or 3 lines of play showing. Now, people always ask me, Steve, what do you do? Depends on the position, but I very seldom even show 4 lines of play the way I'm showing on the screen here. Usually 1, 2, or 3 lines is plenty. So it just depends on the position. But right here, right now, I probably would be happy with 3 lines of play showing. But we're going to keep clicking the minus button until we get back down to 1 line of play showing so we can activate this other feature. And what it is, it allows you to show how Fritz changes his mind as it looks deeper into a search. Instead of you seeing those moves flash by, what it does, it kind of makes a record of it. So you can scroll down this list of moves and see how it looks at a position differently the deeper it looks into the position. So we're going to try to activate it by right-clicking and going to scroll main line. Now, sometimes it doesn't work right away. Sometimes you have to close the engine pane and restart it, but we'll give it a shot here. And it looks like it's kind of hanging a little bit. So we'll close this, and we'll go back up to engine and add kibitzer. And since I already had scroll main line checked, it's already doing it. It's already doing what I want it to do. Now we're going to let it think for a little bit, and then we're going to stop it. I'm going to show you what this does. And it is a really cool thing. You can actually see step by step by step as it looks deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into a position. You can see how it changes its mind as to what the best line of play will be. So I'll tell you what, this may take a little bit of time because it's showing a depth of 11 now, and it's kind of taking its time. So I think we'll stop it here. We'll scroll back and we'll show you from the very beginning what it's doing. The initial move it looks at is c4. Notice here it's saying that's a significant advantage for black. Not a good move for white. But also notice that it only looked 1 ply into the position, and it did it almost instantaneously. That's why it's showing 0-second time of search, 0 kilonodes. It hasn't even looked at 1,000 positions yet when it says C4 is the best line of play. As you scroll down, suddenly, bing, it finds something better. That's why it's in green, and you notice the evaluation has changed significantly. If you play Rook D1, after Fritz is still looking at it, this is all still pretty instantaneous. This has all happened in less than a second. Fritz has changed its mind from C4 to Rook D1, and notice the evaluation has changed from being a pawn and a third advantage for black to being pretty close to a dead even position. 3 1/100ths of a pawn, which for all intents and purposes is nothing. I mean, it's still dead even. We can scroll down a little bit more, and now Fritz has looked 2 ply deep into the position. In other words, looked at all of white's moves and all of black's replies. That's 2 ply, and it says Rook D1 is still good, and black is likely to play Bishop G7. At this point, black is ahead by about 1/4 of a pawn, but it's still pretty much an even position. Notice, too, that this is all happening in less than a second. It's still showing 0 for the search time, 0 kilonodes. In other words, it hasn't even reached 1,000 positions yet. And we'll have to scroll down a bit before we start seeing any kind of significant change there. Notice here now, it's jumped from 2 to 4 as a search depth, 2 to 4 plies. Now it's changed its mind. Bishop B2 is what it says you ought to play, and this is with best play it's found so far. This is the variation that should be played. leading to a very slight advantage for black, 9/100ths of a pawn. Once again, basically nothing, which is why it says equals. Notice that it's still happening in less than a second, but we notice that it has now gone from looking at less than 1,000 moves to looking at about 2,000 moves. Now, after it looks at about 8,000 moves at a search depth of 5 ply, we notice that it's still looking at pretty much the same thing. A little bit of an advantage for black. Again, less than a second, it's looked at 8,000 moves and comes up with this. So we can scroll down again, and now it's changed its evaluation just a hair. But apparently it's something that happens out here that it hasn't displayed, because it looks like it's exactly the same thing. When it changes every time it adds a line, when it chooses to display a line is determined by a number of things. One of them is if the initial move changes, it throws another line of play up. If the evaluation changes by a significant amount, it throws another line of play up on the screen. And every time it adds one more ply to the search depth, it throws another line up on the screen. Those are the three things that causes these lines to be displayed. However, again, out here, apparently a black move has changed, and apparently there are two moves that are probably about equivalent for black, and that's why it is not updating this. Please note, it says search depth of 5 ply, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that's in a brute force search. In a selective search, where it's looking at captures, checks, and other forcing lines, it does look deeper, and that's why I'm saying there are things out here for black, a couple of moves that are probably equivalent, and it's kind of switching back and forth between them, not displaying them, because it's still only a 5 ply brute force search, but there are some things changing, which is why it's showing the same line of play twice. Now we get down here a little bit deeper, a 6 ply search depth, about a quarter pawn advantage for black. Notice it's looked at about 17,000 positions and still done it almost instantaneously. Adding another ply to the search depth, it's now looked 7 ply deep, looked at 76,000 positions and still done it in less than a second. And here again it adds a little bit more to the evaluation. We can scroll down line by line and see how it's changing its mind. Here, after looking a little bit deeper in its its selective search, you'll notice that it's changed its mind from bishop b2 to rook e1 again. Then it looks at rook e1 here, adds a little more information. Then it goes back to bishop b2 again. It finds something else that makes it change its mind. And it continues to do that. Basically, it's bouncing back and forth between those couple of moves. And by the time we get to a 10 ply search depth, we'll notice that bishop b2 is its preferred move. Then it went back and looked at rook e1, said, yeah, I like that instead. And so it's kicking back and forth between these two moves. So, and you'll notice that we had a couple of moves back at the beginning that were essentially, when we were just displaying lines of play. Let me switch back to that. And this is how you turn this off, by the way. If you don't want to use this display, you prefer to go back to the one we were looking at earlier. You right-click and uncheck scroll main line, and it goes back to the original means of displaying the information. And if we click, here we have bishop b2 and rook e1, and they're evaluated pretty close to about the same thing once again. So that's why it's waffling back and forth between these two moves, because they're basically equally good. Neither one of them, and now it changes its mind to bishop b3. And neither one of these moves are going to really wreck your position. And we saw that earlier when we looked at this display, and Fritz was thinking, after it gets to about a 12 ply search depth, these change to zeros, where it basically thinks these are equivalent moves. So that's what scroll main line does. It gives you the opportunity to see step by step everything that Fritz is thinking as it looks deeper and deeper into a search. You can use this scroll button right here on the right, which I didn't explain before, I'm sorry. You can scroll up and down a list and just go down and look at what Fritz is thinking step by step along the way as it's looking deeper and deeper into a positional search. Once again, if this has shot past you very quickly and you're not sure what I was talking about, again, if you do a search for engine analysis and ply on www.chessbase.com, using any search engine that allows you to limit a search to a particular domain, to a particular website, it should pull up some older articles that I've written on this subject. I know I've done it at least 2 or 3 times over the years that are archived on that site. So you'll be able to pull up a written article that explains this stuff and maybe be able to take it a little bit slower than what we've been doing in this video, and be able to understand it, get your head around it a little bit better. Because understanding this engine analysis pane is the key to using the analysis functions not only in ChessBase Light and ChessBase 10, but also in Fritz. If you're using Fritz, any version of Fritz really since 5.32, all these features are there, including scroll main line that we're looking at here. This way of looking at the way the engine has changed its evaluation. All of this stuff has been in Fritz for about 10 years. So if you have a version of Fritz, you can use this feature as well. And again, if the video has gone too fast for you, and I understand that, believe me, I'm one of those people, I understand things a little bit better when I read them than when I'm told these things. You can go back and find these articles using the search terms I've already discussed and take it a little bit slower and get your head around it. Because it's a very important concept to using chess software, understanding what a chess engine is telling you when it's evaluating a position. Next time around in ChessBase Workshop, we're going to look a little bit deeper at ChessBase Light, find out some more features that you can use to help improve your chess play. And until the next time we get together in ChessBase Workshop, you have fun.